Hello learners, greetings of the day. How are you all? Hope you all have listened to the previous videos and completed all that micro task which I had given in the previous sessions. So today we are going to explore the history of social work in the United Kingdom. We know that understanding the genesis of social work is very important. So in this module, we are going to talk about the role of church in the early social welfare, then the key provisions of Elizabethan Poor Law. From there, we will also try to explore the influence of Elizabethan Poor Law. Then what are the revisions that happened? At the same time, we will also try to know about the Beveridge Report and the birth of modern welfare state. What are the key recommendations that they have proposed? The beginnings of charity organization movement and settlement house movement. Then we would be playing a very short video on the history of social work education. Let us try to see what is the role of church in early social welfare. Before the state assumed responsibility for social welfare, church played a pivotal role in providing help to the poor and vulnerable people in the United Kingdom. They were involved in lot many charity activities, distributing alms, food, and clothing to those who were in need. Monasteries, particularly, they served as a center of relief for these poor people. And it was rooted in Christian teachings. They gave more emphasis to compassion and charity. Next is the Elizabethan Poor Law, which got implemented in 1601. That was a landmark piece of legislation that established a national system for the relief of poor in England. It categorized the poor into three groups. The first one is the able-bodied poor. That means those who could work and were expected to do so. Second is the impotent poor. That is the individuals who are unable to work due to their age or maybe because of any disability. And the third category, dependent children. They are the young individuals who require support, right? Now we'll move on to the next one. What are the key provisions that were included in the Elizabethan Poor Law? The very first is the parish responsibility. Each parish were made responsible for caring the poor, and at the same time, they were taking a lead role to take care of the relief efforts. Second is the workhouses. Workhouses were established where the able-bodied poor could work in exchange for food and shelter. The main intention is to discourage idleness and laziness, and only the people who really deserve that aid would be receiving the help from them. That was the part of workhouses. Now there was another concept, that is the outdoor relief. Outdoor relief for those who were unable to work, meaning they receive assistance in their own homes because they were deprived or they may be dependent on the family members. The Elizabethan Poor Law set a precedent of local responsibility and conditional assistance and principles that influence social welfare policies for centuries. It was there since ages this was happening. However, it has also introduced a distinction between the deserving and the undeserving. Earlier, everybody were receiving the help from the church, but now, since they were divided into three categories, there was a difference between the deserving and the undeserving poor, but that sparked future debates on welfare eligibility and stigmatization. How this Elizabethan Poor Law influenced the situation? The Elizabethan Poor Law's principle endured, impacting all the welfare policies in England and beyond. This local responsibility model and categorization of the poor become enduring features of social welfare. The poor laws emphasize on distinguishing between those deemed worthy of aid versus those considered idle-shaped later welfare practices. But despite of all this influence, where they tried to support the deserving people and the not deserving people, they tried to categorize it. The law's punitive aspects led to criticism and calls for a reform in 19th century. Again, that led to very many policy changes. And this law got revised during the time period of 1834 to 1909. The Act of 1834, known as the New Poor Law, this act reformed the system by abolishing outdoor relief, that is, which was there for the able-bodied poor, and requiring all aid to be provided through workhouses, where they made intentionally harsh to deter dependence on welfare. It centralized the control of poor relief under the newly formed Poor Law Commission, reducing the influence of local parishes. If you try to recall in the beginning of the history of social work in the United Kingdom, I told that the local parishes were given whole soul responsibility to help the local people who are in need. But now, after the Act of 1834, there was a change. Then subsequent reforms happened. After that, another scheme got introduced for the old age pension, that is in 1908. They tried to address the inadequacies of the poor law system. These changes paved the way for more human and progressive welfare approaches that laid the groundwork for the modern welfare state. So there was a transition that has happened, starting from charity or alms giving or helping the people when who are in need. From there, a transition happened to find out who are in real need. So there was a change in the approach of the welfare aspect, the modern welfare state. The Poor Law revisions underscored a shift towards deterrence and social welfare policy, reflecting societal beliefs that poverty should be met with discipline. It should not be purely alms giving. As I have mentioned in the previous module, I told we as social workers, we are not giving them fish to eat. Rather, we are teaching them how to catch fish. There comes the difference. However, all these reforms were set to stage a very more compassionate welfare policy in favor of the people who actually deserve some kind of help from the government. Subsequently, in 1942, the Beveridge Report and the birth of modern welfare state occurred. It was again a turning point in the UK social welfare. This was authored by Sir William Beveridge. The report identified 5 giant evils in the society. Now let's see what are those 5 giant evils. One is the want. Second, disease. Third is ignorance. Fourth is squalor. And the fifth one is idleness. Beveridge proposed a comprehensive social insurance system funded by the state to provide cradle-to-grave protection. That was very much required. That is part of the welfare state, to take care of the people from cradle to grave. And Beveridge Report gave a clear focus on all these aspects. The key recommendations of this Beveridge Report includes universal social insurance, the national insurance scheme for all citizens to provide benefits during unemployment, sickness or retirement. So that was there since long. It is not a recently implemented one. So the universal insurance coverage. Second is the National Health Service, NHS. We are quite familiar with NHS. The report laid the groundwork for the creation of NHS in 1948, which provided free healthcare for all citizens. That means way back in 1948, they built up a strong foundation to take care of the health and welfare of all the citizens. Next in line is the family allowances. The report introduced financial support to families with children, aiming to reduce poverty and improve their living standards. And the Beveridge Report was instrumental in establishing the modern welfare state, as I said a while ago, shifting the focus from a punitive relief to comprehensive social protection, a comprehensive coverage right from cradle to grave. And at the same time, it sought to address the root causes of poverty, inequality, profoundly shaping an upward trajectory of social work profession and the welfare of UK. See, any problem, if you are not trying to understand the root causes, then we will not be able to find a solution for that. Social work basically talks about the intervention. Again, it is not a theoretical subject, it has a praxis orientation. So whatever social problems we are identifying, parallelly you need to find the causative factors, the consequences, and an intervention strategy to mitigate this issue in the society. Next is the beginning of Charity Organization Society movement and the Settlement House movement. There were also 2 landmark movements if you check the history of social work in the United Kingdom. The late 19th and early 20th centuries witnessed a rise in voluntary organizations that played a very crucial role in developing social work as a profession. The Charity Organization Society and the Settlement House movement were two influential movements that shaped the practice of philosophy of social work. Let us look into what do you mean by this Charity Organization Society and what is the actual intention of the society. The society got established in 1869. They aim to coordinate all the charitable efforts and promote scientific approaches to poverty. The charity organization movement advocated for casework, that is one of the methods to assess the individual needs and their problems, and also to provide tailored support, which became the foundation in social work. I hope you are able to recall, because casework or working with individuals is one of the methods of social work which we discussed in the previous class. Next in line is the Settlement House movement, which emerged in 1880. Basically, the Settlement House movement established community centers in impoverished neighborhoods. That means the neighborhoods where, facilities were not there. They lack all the basic amenities. These centers offered services such as education, health care, and legal aid, addressing the economic as well as social issues. At the same time, they served as the hub for social reform and activism. These movements highlighted the importance of both individualized support and a systemic change in tackling the social issues such as poverty, unemployment, and that led to the contribution of professionalization of social work. To sum up, the history of social work in the United Kingdom is a very complex narrative shaped by evolving attitudes towards poverty, welfare, and social justice. If we trace back from the early role of the church to the establishment of the modern welfare state, significant developments like Elizabeth and Poor Law, the Poor Law revisions, Beveridge Report, all these have influenced the field of social work. The emergence of voluntary organizations such as Charity Organization Society, the Settlement House movement, they all further emphasize the need for both individual support and also a need for a very broader social reforms to tackle the social problems in the society. And I'm sure that understanding these historical foundations provide a very essential insight to the modern social work. It is not emerged yesterday or day before yesterday. It took ages for us to develop or to get the shape of a profession what we are practicing today. Now you can watch a very short video on the history of social work education. We'll be posting a few material for further reading in the online platform. I hope you got a clear idea about the transition starting from the church-based work to the professional growth in the United States. By going through this web link, I'm sure you will get more idea about how social work started in the United States of America and the Asian region and also in Africa. So that's all for today. Thank you so much.